Dia baru tahu guys bahwa di Malaysia itu contohnya yaitu adalah dengan mencium yang membuat dia jengkel, sakit perasaannya karena guys ya, bahkan kaki mereka terkadang naik ke atas meja. Nah, ini tidak menunjukkan adab dari budaya timur yang sangat diharapkan ya guys ya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Halo guys, hari ini kita berjumpa lagi bersama saya di sini Indra SFN yang tentunya akan selalu setia menyapa teman-teman semua di sana. Semoga kita dalam keadaan baik-baik saja, sehat senantiasa, jasmani juga rohaninya, serta segala bentuk apapun itu pekerjaan kita, aktivitas kita dimanapun, di dalam maupun di luar rumah, semoga diberikan kemudahan dan kelancaran oleh Tuhan Yang Maha Kuasa. Amin, amin ya robbal alamin. Dan begitu bahagianya saya ketika saya dapat bertemu lagi kepada teman-teman semua di sana, walaupun hanya di dalam video ini saja. Dan saya sangat berharap bagi teman-teman yang belum mendukung, belum support channel ini, silakan Anda klik dulu tombol subscribe yang ada di bawah tombol merah dan juga aktifkan notifikasi belnya agar tidak ketinggalan update video terbaru dari channel ini. Yes, rupanya di sini ada satu cerita lainnya yang wajib untuk kita angkat karena cerita ini sangat-sangat menarik guys. Ini terkait tentang Cikgu. Nah, pasti Anda tahu ya guys, Anda juga lebih paham ya bagaimana peran seorang Cikgu dan apa ya kedudukan Cikgu yang telah diberikan kepada orang-orang di Malaysia. Saya juga telah mendapatkan informasi terinci terkait Cikgu ini guys ya, bagaimana semua orang memperlakukan Cikgu secara spesial di negara Malaysia. Oke, namun bukan itu yang akan kita bahas kali ini. Di sini ada cerita terkait tentang Cikgu. Ini Cikgu yang berasal bukan dari Malaysia guys, namun Cikgu ini dari Inggris. Nah, ini adalah kisah hidupnya selama dia menjadi seorang Cikgu ya di Inggris ya guys ya, dan juga selain itu di negara Qatar. Nah, ini pengalaman hidupnya selama menjadi seorang Cikgu di berbagai negara. Nah, di sini pada akhirnya dia menentukan nasibnya untuk berdedikasi ya menjadi seorang Cikgu itu di negara Malaysia. Sangat mengejutkan ya guys ya. Nah, pengakuannya adalah selama dia menjadi seorang Cikgu di Inggris dan juga di Qatar, dia merasa sangat tersiksa batin ya dan juga beban pikiran. Nah, apa maksudnya ya guys ya? Tersiksa batin dan juga beban pikiran menjadi seorang Cikgu di Inggris dan juga di negara Qatar. Kenapa ya guys ya? Namun hal yang berbeda dia alami saat dia menjadi seorang Cikgu di negara Malaysia. 180 derajat semua berubah. Dan juga pola konsep hidupnya semua berubah saat dia merasakan itu di negara Malaysia guys. Nah, yang ingin saya ketahui pengalamannya ini guys ya, mengapa dia merasa tertekan, tersiksa batin, beban pikiran saat dia menjadi Cikgu di Inggris dan juga di Qatar. Dan mengapa hal itu tidak dia alami di negara Malaysia. Dan apa saja yang ia terima perlakuan selama ia menjadi Cikgu di Qatar dan juga di Inggris ya. Saya ingin tahu guys, kita akan mengulas video itu secara lengkap. Kita akan mendengarkan secara langsung walaupun lewat video dari keterangan Cikgu ini. Oke, tanpa banyak basa-basi karena saya sudah sangat penasaran untuk melihat video itu, kita saksikan sekarang juga. Jom.
Assalamualaikum.
Welcome back, lovely people.
In this video, we will be discussing the advantages and disadvantages of teaching in the UK, in the Middle East, and in Malaysia. And we also want to share our experiences as parents as well, with our children going to schools in these regions.
Yeah, I think just please keep in mind that these insights are based on our personal experiences. So others may have different and varying perspectives depending on the specific school or area that they taught in as well. So let's start off with the advantages of working in the UK.
Not very many, but we'll mention a few. Schools in the UK have very high standards and they are very well established, and the resources are great. We felt that our kids really developed whilst they were there through early years in Key Stage 1. They built good foundations in numeracy and literacy. The professional development opportunities are great as well. Training using evidence-informed practice and career development could also be an advantage in UK schools.
I think also cultural diversity. Schools in the UK often have a diverse student population and it provides such a rich cultural experience for some teachers as well. I feel like the competitive salary and benefits are quite good in the UK as well. Increments are generally based on performance-related pay. could be an advantage or disadvantage, but I think mainly an advantage. And there's a great teachers' pension scheme as well. So if you're wanting to retire there, it's a great way to save as well. Yeah.
All right, so moving on to the disadvantages of the UK.
Oh, where shall we
could be
start?
all day here, right? But we'll keep it short. All right, so I think one of the main disadvantages was behavioural issues in the classroom. I had many a time students swear at me, storm out of the classroom, throw chairs across the classroom, have to break up fights. It can be really emotionally draining. Also, the cost of living in the UK. We were living paycheck to paycheck in the UK. So many bills, so many things that we had to pay at the end of the month.
Council tax.
Yeah, just in general, it was difficult getting by, and we couldn't afford the luxuries, expensive holidays or eating out at restaurants. So all of these things we had to limit.
Yeah, I think also like the high workload and stress, that really took its toll on us, didn't it? I think the extensive planning, the marking and administrative tasks can really weigh you down. I remember like during my Christmas holidays, I had 2 weeks off. I was marking 180 exam scripts.
You even remember the number.
Oh my God, how can I forget? I've got trauma from it. Also the word Ofsted, if you say the word Ofsted, it really still gives you chills
Anxiety,
down your spine. It's so intense when they come and visit your school. Luckily, I didn't have to go through that because I only taught in the UK for 1 year. I did my NQT year and then I left. But
I went through 3 Ofsted inspections. It was tough.
In how many years?
And in 5 years, so 3 Ofsted inspections. Yeah. Okay, the weather's miserable as well. Let's not ignore that fact.
God, yeah, I can remember scraping the ice in the morning whilst dealing with 2 kids as well, dropping them off. That tension, and also like you go to school and it's grey, and you come back and it's dark. So you just feel like you have SAD, seasonal affective disorder, as well for quite a long time in the UK as well. So yeah, I think that's why we left, isn't it? We got so fed up of the rat race. There was just no time for the kids, no quality of life. It was non-stop. And weekends were just catching up with housework and shopping and
visiting family members.
Too, yeah.
So we decided at that point that we would move to the Middle East because it's Muslim friendly, and the salary packages were great at the time. I think they still are in many countries. So it's tax free. The cars were really cheap. So I bought myself a American muscle car, a Dodge Challenger.
You love that.
I love that car. I really did. Yeah, and that was 35,000 real. It was a second-hand one, about 5 or 6 years old, about £7,000. So dead cheap, really cheap. Obviously, fuel's cheap. You can save because, especially if you're both earning, you can save a considerable amount. We paid off all our debts. We even performed Hajj whilst we were there. In 2 years, we did really well.
Yeah. I think tutoring can be lucrative as well.
Correct. Yes, we have a lot of friends there who tutored on the side.
You're not supposed to tell them that. I think some schools do not allow it, but if you do have the opportunity, it can be quite lucrative.
Yeah, they were doubling their salaries just by tutoring. I guess professional development is good there as well. So many international schools, so you can move from school to school. We know staff members that we work with who started as teachers and now they're head teachers at schools in the same region.
Yeah, they've done really well. For us, the strong expat community was really important, and that's what we found in the Middle East, in Qatar. It gave us support and a sense of belonging as well. And I think at times when we move on to disadvantages, we found that we sought solace in the people through pain, and that really kept us bonded, didn't it? I also feel the cultural experiences can be quite vast. So you get to celebrate National Day, watching things like we've never seen before, like a sword dance. These were, and the food as well, right? Remember the rice with whole lamb on top, and it just going at it with their hands. Yeah, that was strange, but so much fun, wasn't it? And I think also with staying in the Middle East means that it's easy to travel to other parts of the world because you've got connecting airports like Qatar and Dubai and even Saudi have a lot of connecting flights. And so it's closer to the UK, which is about 7 hours. So if there are any family emergencies, God forbid, if it was to happen, you know that you can get there within the day. So that's quite good.
Yeah. Okay, so disadvantages of the Middle East. Now, I know in Qatar we had a good work-life balance, but I do know friends that are in Dubai, and because of the inspectorate there, a little bit like Ofsted in the UK, it's called KHDN. They have inspections every year, and they're like full 4-day inspections, and it can take its toll. So that could be a disadvantage. I would also say the climate, for say 6 months of the year, it's really difficult, tough going. You can't do much outdoors because it's so hot. For the other 6 months, it's fine. You know, we even camped in the desert, you know, during the winter.
Yeah.
And that was really nice.
A lack of greenery as well.
Yeah.
You don't realize the impact that greenery can have on your well-being, and just seeing some trees, it just makes you feel a lot better. And you don't see much of that in the Middle East. In Qatar, we didn't see much of that. But when you I suppose in Dubai, you've got the plastic ones.
Well, yeah, it's artificial, you know, but you do see some greenery.
Yeah.
The sandstorms and polluted air, it's not the best air quality either. So I guess that could be a disadvantage.
No, but it did mean we could have a day off at school. Now, after COVID, obviously, clearly it's all online now. So there goes the days off. But yeah.
And yeah, actually, when it rained, remember, we used to get days off when the whole thing, all the roads were flooded.
Yeah.
People couldn't get to the school. So
Loved it.
Yeah, that was great. Okay. Yeah, the other main disadvantage for me was behaviour, similar to the UK, the behaviour of the Qatari students at the school that we were working at.
Not the same though. It's like it is a behaviour, but it's not the same as a UK.
No, it's not the same.
It's more privileged students, you know.
Yeah, more entitlement.
Yeah.
I think. So just to give you an example, I started teaching my first lesson, year 10 class. A student came in, he was about 15 minutes late. He didn't have his school uniform. He had a thobe on and sandals. He walked straight past me, didn't greet me, didn't say hello, went straight to the back of the classroom, sat down on his chair and put both of his feet on the table. I couldn't believe my eyes. You know?
I remember I had a similar experience, but every time I used to have a year 7 boys class, I'd have anxiety the night before, and I'd have one student in particular who'd walk in casually late, and if he had a sharp object like a pencil in his hand, you know, he'd prod somebody on the way and find it really funny. I'd sometimes fear for the safety of myself and the students as well, and I felt like I had no control in what I could do because his father was quite high up in society, and so you couldn't exclude or suspend the student, you know, because you know he'll be back in the next day. It's power. It's called wasta and power, right?
Wasta is connections.
Connections,
right?
yeah.
So there was barely any learning taking place in the classroom. You know, we try our best, but you know, sometimes you plan a great lesson and you might only end up getting through half of it.
Yeah, and I also feel like because of that, you feel like you've almost like forgotten how to be creative in your lesson. You feel de-skilled after a little while if you've been there for quite a long time, because you feel it's just crowd control. You're not actually being creative in teaching, and you'd be lucky to get through all the content in one lesson, right?
Yeah.
With the lessons that you planned.
Yeah, so whilst we were there, we realized that the best way to control behavior there is to build those relationships and build that rapport with the students, really get to know them. And we found that the teachers that could actually speak Arabic, they were the ones who could build the best rapport with the students.
Agree.
It really helped knowing the language.
Yeah, I feel it's like a sort of respect as well, that the students feel like, wow, you're really
Embracing that,
embracing our culture and our language. For me, that I feel the cultural adjustments can be quite tough as well. We were okay, but I felt some staff found it hard to adapt to local cultures and customs. And it can be challenging for some because you need to be aware of social norms. For example, if you're taking a video in the, mall or outdoors, if you accidentally take a picture of a woman, without realizing you're doing it, you could land yourself in a lot of, in hot water, really. I always felt scared to lose my job as well, just in case I say or do anything wrong. You always live on fear. And on the edge as well, thinking, you could say something wrong and somebody powerful can get rid of you the next day. So there's that as well.
Yeah, so it wasn't the right place for us. So obviously that's why, and our children felt isolated at school. They felt bullied and withdrawn. So that's the point we decided that, okay, let's try and apply for jobs in Malaysia. And luckily we got the opportunity in Malaysia. We've not looked back since.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I think the advantages of working in Malaysia, let's start off with the cultural diversity. I mean, come on, the food, amazing. You've got every sort of cuisine.
Every cuisine.
Yeah, and I feel also at school, you've got, you're not just teaching Malaysian students, you're teaching Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Indian. And it's just wonderful because you also celebrate all their events, special days as well. Diwali, they call it Deepavali. You've got Chinese New Year, it's in the dragon dance. It's brilliant. It's so much fun, isn't it? Also, I feel like in Malaysia, you're more likely to have professional opportunities where you can progress in your career very quickly. So we found that we were promoted quite early on as soon as we came in. Saf as SLT and myself as head of EAL. So we were lucky that way, weren't we?
Yeah, there are good internal opportunities within schools.
Yeah. Also, I think the location of Malaysia is brilliant, isn't it? Because it's easy to travel around and explore neighboring countries, and flights are generally quite cheap. So, for example, Air Asia, right? You can get a flight to Thailand for about £40 return. It's brilliant, yeah.
And just so many countries, neighboring countries that you can visit on the cheap.
Yeah.
So that was great. Behavior of the students here is amazing. You know, they're there to learn.
Yeah.
They're respectful. They're courteous. They say thank you to you. They greet you. It was really refreshing. You know, when we came here.
Yeah. One of the things they do is. At the end of the lesson, and I found this, it was really overwhelming actually in such a delightful way. The students would come to you, they'd grab your hand and they'd put it on their forehead like that as a sign of respect. And that was just a wonderful practice, wasn't it? Yeah.
Even our kids as well, because of the great work ethic of the students here and their mannerisms and their character, our kids have developed that character and that work ethic. And the opportunities that they've had at the school as well, like public speaking opportunities, being the MC in assemblies, going to Model United Nations conferences, acting on stage, all of these have really built their confidence. Another advantage would be the cost of living. It is really cheap to live here. The food is cheap. Obviously, you can find expensive places and cheaper places, but you could eat for as less as 50 pence. You can have a meal.
Good roti canai.
Yeah. Obviously, we don't do many of those. I wish we did more of those, but my family, they fancy that.
Stop eating steak then.
They fancy going to the restaurants in the malls, which are a bit more expensive. The work-life balance has been great here as well. I hardly take work home.
That's true. You can, but obviously it'll be a choice, isn't it? You can actually switch off after you finish school and just enjoy time with your family, go out. And, Good. So, moving on to the disadvantage of living in Malaysia.
Okay. There are a few. I would say one of them is the distance from the UK or from your home country. Now, from the UK, it's a 13 to 14 hour flight. And it is difficult to get home within a day. If there was any emergencies, God forbid, it would be difficult to get home. And obviously, family visiting as well, they have to think twice because of the cost involved and the length of the journey. One other thing is the cars are really expensive here. They have, on foreign cars, they have a really high tax rate. So you'd have to buy Protons or Peraduas, which are locally manufactured.
Yeah. I think the salary variability as well, that's a disadvantage, isn't it?
Yeah, between schools, salaries do vary from school to school. You have the higher tier schools that pay well, have attractive packages, but then the lower tier schools which don't pay well, and the difference between the two is quite significant.
Yeah, I think locals also remind you that, you know, you're on a higher pay. So you do feel a little bit, disheartened by that.
Yeah, so the expats obviously get paid sometimes double, triple what the locals do.
Which is an unfair process.
It is really unfair.
But I suppose it's out of our hands.
It is.
Yeah. I think one of the other disadvantages could be the climate. We're happy with the climate. We love the heat. We don't mind the humidity so much, although it can be tedious. But you've got the monsoon season, so you could be out sometimes enjoying the weather, and then suddenly it'll just lash it down with thunder, lightning, and you know, people could be struck, can be a bit dangerous, and trees have fallen, landslides. So, you know, these things are kind of out your hands.
Yeah, don't be put off by that.
No, it's not once every day, probably. If lucky. And I think also, I find that the parents are very exam focused here. They want their child to be spoon-fed the information. And I find that the inquiry-based learning is something that they don't actually want to so much. Parents can also be very competitive, can't they? They want to know the grades. It has to be an A. And that can be quite unfair on some of the students. It's good for my kids. It pushes them so I don't have to think other kids doing that.
It does tire a lot of the students out. They have to do tutoring after school.
Yeah.
You know, some of them up to like 10, 11 o'clock at night.
That's true. And yawning the next day in their class.
They're so tired.
Yeah, because they work so hard. And sometimes with these unreasonable expectations, it's tough on students who, special needs students as well. I think autistic students, and because it's like, no, they're going to be a doctor, they're going to be a lawyer, and they're just unreasonable expectations. So that can be quite, a disadvantage. Another thing is more competition for jobs due to lack of positions for expats. So a lot of people kind of contact us from the UK saying, how can I find a job in Malaysia? And middle tier and lower tier schools mainly employ local staff, as it's a lot cheaper. You could get a job in a higher tier school, but like I said, there's one or two maybe highest tier schools around, not many.
If you look on test, you'll find some jobs, but obviously it's not an extensive list like you get in the Middle East.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's easier to get a job in the Middle East than it is in Malaysia. So we've been very fortunate.
So to summarize, before you make a decision as to where you would like to move to, it is really important to consider personal preferences, career goals, and adaptability when choosing where to teach and work.
So that's it for today. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and we'll endeavor to answer them as soon as we can. Until next time.
Dan itu tadi guys, video yang baru saja kita reaksi guysnya. Ini sebuah kejutan yang dirasakan oleh Cikgu, yang mana pengalaman dia selama hidup menjadi seorang pengajar, tenaga pengajar, seorang guru di negaranya Inggris. Lalu dia pergi ke Qatar dan juga berakhir di negara Malaysia. Dan saya yakin keberadaannya saat ini di negara Malaysia itu membuat dia tidak akan pernah pergi lagi ke negara lain dan akan selalu setia mengabdi untuk menambah ilmu dan juga memintarkan ya guys ya, memintarkan banyak murid-murid yang ada di negara Malaysia itu guys ya. Dan itu adalah satu peran yang tentunya sangat penting. Nah, dia baru tahu guys bahwa di Malaysia itu peran dari seorang guru itu memang betul-betul sangat dihargai, dihormati, disegani ya guys ya. Dan levelnya itu memang di bawah kecintaan kepada kedua orang tua guys. Nah, hal itu baru dia ketahui yang membuat dia sangat tergugah. Apalagi dia baru saja melihat bagaimana adat budaya yang sangat berbeda, yang dengan sistem cara yang berbeda, yang berjalan begitu saja, yang membuat dia sangat terkejut guys. Contohnya yaitu adalah dengan mencium tangan guru. Nah ini guys, ini yang membuat hal dia sangat terkejut dan tidak akan pernah dia temui di Inggris. Apalagi di Inggris guys ya. Dan tadi keterangannya bahwa terkadang murid-murid di negara lain itu yang membuat dia jengkel, sakit perasaannya karena murid kebanyakan di negara lain itu tidak menghargai peran seorang guru ya guys ya. Peran seorang guru ini sangat penting. Namun di negara lain itu tidak sangat menghormatinya, terutama di Inggris tadi guys ya. Bahkan kaki mereka terkadang naik ke atas meja. Nah ini tidak menunjukkan adab dari budaya timur yang sangat diharapkan ya guys ya. Karena memang dunia mereka berbeda, kehidupan mereka berbeda, ya tidak ada rasa saling harga menghargai. Namun ketika hal yang dia harapkan itu datang dari negara Malaysia. Nah ini yang membuat tentu dia sebagai guru memilih Malaysia karena hal ini dan tidak akan pergi kemana-mana dan terus akan mensukseskan kepintaran orang-orang Malaysia untuk kelak menjadi orang yang sangat berguna guys. Nah ketika dia masuk dan juga menjadi seorang guru di Malaysia, dia sudah mendapatkan apa yang dia cari guys. Apa yang dia inginkan selama ini ia temukan di Malaysia. Walaupun dia hidup tumbuh besar di negara lain, di negara Inggris, namun hal yang dia cari bukan di Inggris guys, melainkan di Malaysia. Baiklah, demikian dari video aku. Semoga video ini bermanfaat bagi kita semua dan aku mohon diri mohon maaf jika ada kesalahan kata, kesalahan sikap aku kepada Anda semua mohon dimaafkan dan aku akhiri. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.